To start off, I'm going to cut a slug off of this bar of steel to make the positive for the mold. Next, I put the slug in the lathe so I can square up the one face. This will allow me to have a perfectly flat face for drilling the inside diameter. To get the inside diameter that I need, I first have to drill a 1/2 inch hole, which is just big enough for me to fit my cutter inside. Okay, now we have a hole all the way through. Now we have a hole big enough to fit our cutter in. I can get the inside diameter to the exact size I need, plus a little bit of stock so the gold casting will clean up. To get the outside dome shape on the ring, I use my mill to cut a large radius and a piece of steel to use as a guide as I sand the outside diameter. Here I'm using green compound on a polishing wheel to get the outside diameter of the ring to a nice mirror finish. To get the inside to a mirror finish, I have to use a polishing wheel on a rotary tool. Now it's time to put the mold together so we can cast a gold ring. Here I'm putting casting sand into the core half of our mold and packing it down, and then I'm using a straight edge to make it nice and flat on top. Next we press the positive into the core half of the mold so half of it's sticking up, and then we can use a dowel to form the runner and the gate area. Next we are going to need talc powder, which just so happens to be the main ingredient in some baby powders. This will prevent the core half and the cavity half of the molds from sticking together. Using a set screw to line up both halves, we can now pack it with sand, and this will form our cavity half of the mold. Because of the talc powder, we can pull the mold apart into the core and cavity halves, allowing us to pull out the positive. Next we need to add vents all the way around, which will allow any air or gases to escape, preventing any bubbles from forming in the gold casting. Using the set screw again, we can line up the two halves perfectly and we'll be ready to pour the molten gold. Before melting the gold, I sprinkle on a little bit of borax powder. This will prevent any oxides from forming, which will show up as impurities in the gold after we've poured it. We need to get the gold to a nice yellow glow and keep the flame on it to the very last second. Using a jewelry saw, I cut off the vents and the riser. Next I give a rough sanding to the inside of the ring to get it nice and flat. That way I can slip it onto the mandrel, install it into the lathe, and start cutting. To cut the gold ring on the lathe, I had to put plastic sheets everywhere. That way I could collect any of the chips or dust to be remelted later. Once all the lathe work is done, I use my little broom to sweep up all the dust and chips to be remelted. Unfortunately, I didn't record any more video clips of the final sanding and polishing, but here is the end result.